Welcome back, listeners. Today on Drug Diversion Insights, we have Michael LaFauci, the founder and CEO of MIDAS Healthcare Solutions. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Terry. Nice to be here.
Very nice to have you. Before we talk about MIDAS and the product that you have, tell us a little bit about your background.
So my background, it's kind of unusual, right? As a pharmacist, really back in the late 80s, I graduated and went into hospital and retail and then corporate later on in my life, but changed my career while waiting online for a hot dog and a soda at a stadium and started to realize that I can order remotely from my seat. So I said, I want to do something about this. And this was back in the late 90s, right? So everybody thought I was crazy, leaving my career, developing software to order remotely from your seats for concessions and arenas. Successfully exited that and decided, you know what, I can build my own company. So at that point, after I exited that, came across an opportunity where I was building a medical device to eliminate fetal lacerations around a baby. It was the most common surgery, most common injury. Successfully exited that and started to realize I had a track record, right? That I can do what I wanted to do and started to do things that were really interesting and came about looking at fentanyl patches when somebody told me that they have all this excess medications and it was a major risk in the industry for diversion. So I started to look at medications first, the patches per se. This company was started on a lint roller, right? So full circle for me, I'm back in my industry from building companies outside of my industry, back as utilizing my pharmacy experience as an assistant director years and years ago, kind of coming right back into the whole realm of what happens in pharmacy. Right? What is going on with all this excess medications? Not just fentanyl patches, but it was tablets, it was liquids, it was all types of medications. And how do we lose control of the chain of custody? So that was the beginning of MIDAS. And at that point, I made some key initial phone calls. And before you knew it, some of my partners, we have a company now that's really moving in the right direction just based on the feedback. So that's that's my background.
Wow, interesting. So an app for ordering food at the ball game.
That's right.
I think that is one of the more interesting roundabout circles that I've heard.
It's you know what happens, and you started to realize because why as a pharmacist, right, Terry? You know, we went to school for a certain amount of training, right? But our training was so significant because it really made us different. We looked at all the challenges, we looked at all the little things that are important inside that industry, and we're really perfectionists as we were trained, right? Yeah. And so how do we bring perfectionism back into the diversion world, right? So I was doing it in other companies, how to get perfection around that and how to successfully exit those. But I'm happy to be back here in full circle, like I said before, and to make a difference and disrupt the industry. So, and we're doing that. So, because what we tend to do in healthcare, especially, is we ignore the obvious, right? Mm-hmm. We take them that's the norm and we should be okay with it. Right? We've done it as an assistant director. I did it for how many years? It's time that we were creative. We can initiate change and disrupt this market and actually protect our patients and our healthcare givers.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you're right. We are perfectionists, but I think a lot of us sometimes are very dialed in and focused. We're not necessarily visionaries. And right. So, yeah, we don't think about other alternatives, and myself included. I mean, I'm more, this is, I need a visionary next to me to give me suggestions.
You have it. We all have it, and we have to just tap into it. And I love coaching people to do it, right? So we make a big difference for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, tell us about your product, MIDAS View.
So MIDAS View, I mean, if you don't know about us already, I mean, we're a really unique product addressing the biggest black hole in the industry, right? So the biggest black hole in the industry is on the wasting side. We've taken care of all the automated dispensing that goes on in the industry how many years ago when I was implementing those technologies. But we forgot really about what happens on the waste side. There's no real proof around the disposal process, right? So we're looking at it from that perspective. So now we can provide proof around the disposal process. We can provide proof around what's required around a witness to assure that that witness is there, right? No flybys anymore. We can have, with the built-in artificial intelligence and the machine learning that we have built into the system, we're able to see with our 4K 360 cameras to look at this high resolution of what's going on during the process. So we're really giving a platform of confidence back to both pharmacy, nursing, and administration of what's going on during this process.
And when you say we can view it all, that is through the cameras. That is what you're talking about, right?
That's right. It's through the cameras. Those cameras are part of integrated into our systems with two portholes that where you are disposing of. So the cameras, for one, you can always look at them then or now or later on, at any point when you decide to. You're looking at an opportunity to, if you don't have a witness nearby, you can always review it later. So proceed going forward, right? Don't get challenged by looking for somebody during that workforce challenge for nurses when they have to go physically find somebody, and are they really staying? But now you can look at it, and when you are reviewing it, you're able to maneuver those cameras post the actual view, right? You can look at it in 360. You can look at things like, did they actually put it in the actual port where it belongs? Hazardous versus non-hazardous. First time you're guided environmentally, what goes where. You know, we were always told what drugs go where, but you can't really remember everything. So all these little facets of it, what makes it everything, when you bring it all together, right? How do we have real proof around keeping us safe, around the excess that's out there, so that we know we're assuring that it's put into the right area and keeping the areas safe around them, especially with the nurses, if they're not tempted, and they know there's a reason that they should be doing this in the right way and following the procedure.
Right. Is it a separate piece of equipment? Does it integrate with the automated dispensing machine? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a separate piece of equipment. It almost looks like a regular medical cart with two ports and two wasting containers on the bottom. Um, it integrates with all the different data points that we need through the EHR, through the ADM. So we're looking at things like HL7, which is for the first time that people aren't really tapping into. We're looking at messages around ADT on the admitting side, and what's been given on the administration side. For the first time, we're going to be able, and we are doing it now, where you're able to reconcile the medication wasting process fully, right? So what does that mean? We're going to address all the outliers. You know, the typical outliers that are out there now around dispenses from pharmacy, dispenses from the narcotic cabinet, what goes on around those different pieces. How about things like when you have different users? One might pull a medication, one might waste it. Those are two different users. How about time variabilities? How about location? Right, you might pull it in the OR, and then it's getting wasted maybe in the recovery room. All those different points, which have never been able to been fully recognized and then reconciled, we're able to address them, right? And then not only address them, but really at the time be able to give you some real strong data around it.
Okay. So does it alert you if something is missing? Does it tell you if there's been a handoff? I mean, what are the kinds of information that you can get from it? Because
So
there's practice and then there's diversion, right?
practice errors versus
Yeah.
really diversion, and then how do you
Yeah.
siphon those out, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's a great question. So yeah, it does all of the above what you just said. So we're going to take and tag certain data points that may be questionable, right? That could be things like, you might have had a practice error. Let's look at it, but let's zero in. What better way to not only zero in now, not looking at a one-dimensional data that you're getting now, but multidimensional. So what does that mean? So that means now you're able to go back in, look at the cameras, look at your video on demand whenever you want to look at it, and actually confirm what happened. So what does that do? That brings down your investigational time way down, right? You don't need to guess. You don't need to bring people in and understand if it was really a practice error versus was it really a diversion event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just thinking, in some institutions that have the surveillance software, and so they can see everything that's happening, but then there's something unaccounted for, and then they go back and they ask the nurse, what'd you do with it, just so they can try to get it accounted for from a compliance perspective, right? And the nurse says, oh, I wasted it, but I forgot to do it in the machine. If they had performed that waste, let's just say that the MIDAS View is in the med room. If they had performed it in the med room, could you use it for that to even see if they were in the med room?
You can see.
Okay. So it's always going, not just when there's.
Well, it's not, it's going by transactional, right? It's a transactional link. So you can look to see when they said they did wasted it. So it would come up and I'll see if they had a wasting event. And then when you go to review that video, that wasting event would be linked to that transaction, right? So you're not searching and screaming through camera work, right? It's really direct It's focused, it's lasered in. It's not like your regular camera that's in that med room. And the fact that it has AI built into it, Terry, you're going to be able to tell even if that was in time. It's going to start to recognize tablets, liquids, sizes, colors. Did somebody put something in their pocket? Did somebody move out of the zone? Let's call them boundaries, right? Are they moving out of those boundaries during the wasting process? And if there was a witness with them, right, on camera as well, did they stay? Did they go out of the boundaries? What did that person do? For the first time ever, we're able to see. Seeing is a gift, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, certainly what you just said about the witness, if a facility still has the policy that you must have a witness, which, they do, and they may not feel comfortable letting that go at the very beginning, you could certainly use the product to see if their witness is really witnessing.
That's exactly it. And, the time that we guess, right? Because it is the dark side, right? And I call the med surge areas, it's the dark hole, the black hole, and I call the OR sometimes it's really incredibly challenged, right? Is it really the Wild West? And it's just the fast pace. And it's not because some of these healthcare workers are bad people. It's because they're challenged. They forget, it's not easy what they're doing. So we have to give them full confidence. We're here to support them during this process, and we're here to protect them, right?
Right. Yeah. You've mentioned the OR a couple of times. So does your product work the same, differently? Is it suitable for a procedural area in the OR?
Yes. So we have 3 different types of products. One is for the med surge, like we were just discussing, right, for the regular floors, and then we have a mini, right, that a MIDAS mini that fits those tight medication rooms, so it's smaller size, providing the same platform, right, to work with. That's another thing, right? We're challenged with where do you prep, right? People don't know where to prep. They really shouldn't be prepping on those ADMs, but do you want to prep in an area that's really conducive to what you're doing right now? The Pro cart, the MIDAS Pro is meant for the operating room, recovery room, any of those procedure areas that we were just discussing. And it's meant for those areas because the way it's built to meet the challenges of those areas. So what do I mean by that? The software, number one, is meant to have multi-dose wasting during the OR because you're going to have 4 or 5 drugs at a time. They can build their own patient hot list for the day of all the procedures that they're doing. So it makes it easier from a selection point of view. They're able to build their list of, let's say, commonly used drugs during that typical procedure that they always have. So they're not searching through the formulary. It's their pre-built list that they can build months before as an anesthesiologist, whoever's using the system. And then when they go to waste, it's like a menu. I want it to be as fast as a menu item, right? So that you're choosing, right back to my old piece of my experience. Start choosing these things, make it easy, right? So that they feel and fast and confident, right? So when they go through this process and after they make each selection, they're able to move through that process. Each one of those wasting events for each drug would be a separate video. So it's logged into the electronic file. So when anybody wants to do a review of these, it's always there to look at as separate video events tracking the different wasting events.
Okay. And they don't need to then log on to the automated dispensing machine in addition.
No, you're turning that off totally, right? Or not doing it at all there anymore. It's all on this system. This is your final piece of truth for the wasting process. The wasting process on those ADMs is not efficient. They did all what they had to do on making it real specific around dispensing, and they did a great job on that. They kind of let go of that piece, right? They kind of were taking it for granted. It's the open gap, right? We have to address all these open gaps and make sure that we fill them in for the administration so they feel confident.
Okay. So nurses, physicians, anybody, you start out at the ADM, you do your dispensing, and then if you have integrated waste or if you need to come back to waste, then you do that on the MIDAS completely separate and you forget the ADM.
That's waste. That's exactly. Okay. And it'll all reconcile at the end. So even if you have diversion software, it's going to reconcile. It's going to reconcile first with the ADMs if it was dispensed from there, but direct dispenses from pharmacy where it really, all the systems talking to the EMR as well, full triangulate all the data, right? So that you have a way of reconciling the data so that you zero out at the end, right? So you want to make sure, and then any of those triggers, like if we have a trigger on our side that we're looking at, how about this? if we start to see people who don't waste at all, right? Versus people who do waste. Why isn't somebody not wasting, right? We can send that trigger to maybe onto their software, right? To their diversion software. Let's look at them, or alert on our reports for them to look at those individuals. Or how about, let's say, look at the other software that's out there, like Invistix, whoever you want to look at, Protenus. Any of those systems can point to us. If they have any questionable, people that they want to look at, they can send alerts to us. And then what happens there? We can do we have a feature called RX Intercept. So what does that mean? So that means at any point they can go in, right, and intercept that actual waste the next time they go to waste, right? Never been done in the industry before. And that will be collected on video at that cart for a chain of custody, and pharmacy will be alerted when it has been collected, and they're going to be able now to come back and take those RX intercepts, bring them down to central pharmacy, right? And then look at them and say, all right, is this really what they were supposed to be wasting? They'll never know when they're going to get intercepted. So you can set those up, accordingly. You can say, you know what, I want to intercept just this floor with these nurses, or I want to just intercept with maybe just this one nurse.
You can make it random
or targeted, right?
Yeah.
And it could be any way you want it. You can drive this nursing and pharmacy. This is where they kind of lock arms, right? With our system. They can drive this as best as the way they want to drive it and make sure it's effective for them.
And can the person who's driving it from the diversion, whatever program, whoever you sit under, can they do it fairly real time where they can, I am now concerned about, RN Smith, and she's just removed something. And so then log on to MIDAS and say the next time she comes in.
That's exactly it. So this is exactly it. So the alibi system is our control system, right? To look at what's going on from an administration point of view. So pharmacy, and then if you want to have nursing, have access to that too as well. They would be able to go in just like you just said and say, you know what, I have some concerns. I want to go in, and maybe not every time that next time that nurse wastes, maybe every third time. So they can't even say to themselves, when is it going to happen, right? And you should be able to. Maybe you want to look at even buddy wasting. Maybe when these two people waste together, you want to look at it, and they'll never know. But the good thing is now that you'll know, because what really matters now is you have the video that goes along with it. And with that 4K 360 camera and that AI built into it, it's pretty cool how that kind of brings it all together.
Yeah, video is important. We use it to rule in, but also rule out. A lot of questions that you're like, that they said this, but I don't believe anybody. And so, you can see it.
In fact, the reason why it was named Alibi, the part of our system, because when we did our insights, we did it with nurses, we did it with pharmacists, we did it with anesthesiologists. They named it the Alibi system because they think that finally they do have the alibi, right?
Yeah,
check and look at this, which was never there for them, Terry.
Right.
We have to, they need support. We got to support them.
Yeah, that's true. And then that helps rule out I just got busy and I just forgot, which, we'd like it to not happen. We'd like 100% accountability, but reality is reality. So it does happen occasionally. Yeah.
It's about enhancing detection and protection.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So your product is fairly new. Is the intention, the technology in general might be there, the intention to be able to do this with all of the software surveillance companies out there?
Absolutely. Because the data interface that we're feeding into is kind of what they're feeding into anyway. So all the way this data exchange is happening is to make sure that we're an agnostic, number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in a way that makes us fully robust on the reconciliation part of it. So I want to make those software companies, the diversion software companies, feel confident. I want my directors of pharmacy, my chief pharmacy officers to feel confident. I want administration to feel confident that we're going to support them. They should not be holding this question in their head. What's going on my wasting side, right? 70% of all the waste discrepancies that go on is on the waste side. We have to take care of that. And more importantly, Terry, look what goes on in pharmacy, right?
I was going to ask you about pharmacy. Yeah.
So when I was telling you before about RX Intercept and they intercept it, right? the chain of custody. Follow it for a second. Up on the floors, it gets collected by pharmacy. It gets all scanned. All of this is all on camera, so the chain of custody is followed all the way through back to pharmacy. Everything is neatly
Refills. Yeah.
tied up in
Yeah.
bags, so you have everything. When it gets down to pharmacy, they got to open it. They got to look at the videos to make sure everything was put into these bags that they just collected, right? But final chain of destruction is in central pharmacy. So pharmacy, just like the OR and those other areas, would have a pro system like I described to you before, because they got to handle everything else, right? So, and the final destruction of that RX intercept, we now know it's been proven. We looked at it, right? And now we can destroy it all on camera. So fully through, right? Now, if there's a question, we would mark it on our software on camera for further review by the director of pharmacy. And then they would have to come look at what they're looking at. If that needs more testing, does it not need maybe a test, whatever it is, but at least there's a chain of custody and we're following it through the process. But pharmacy, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish.
I was going to say, but pharmacy is also challenged by what else, right? You have things like batch wasting, compounding, overfills, patient-owned meds, right? How do you destroy any of this stuff? Exactly, right? Let's get rid of all the excess that does not need to be there, right? But let's provide some information around it. There's no intelligence here. MIDAS is providing that intelligence around that process that's never been done before. So the batch wasting, think of it for a second. We're going to be able to get rid of batch wasting IVs, compounding, anything you're doing in that IV room. We have logs and paperwork right now, right? What would it be like now to really have an electronic record and proof that we got rid of it? We look outside all the time out of our departments, right?
Yeah.
We got to start looking inside too.
Right. Yeah. I want to ask you about in the compounding room, the IV compounding room, but something you said made me think, could you use it for, you said patient-owned meds. So patient, if it's, well, this is a whole nother topic, right? Storing it in pharmacy, which is not appropriate, but a lot of people do. It's not wasting at this point, but it is that double count and sealing and accountability. So that would mostly just be the camera. Can you?
Yep. So it's in the software being prepared right now, right?
Okay.
So we're just finalizing that piece, right? So how does that look? How does it label? We'll even maybe produce a label around that. But you should have accountability around that. We should have a chain of custody around that. And why not, right? We're going to be doing things like expired and recall meds, right, from central pharmacy. So, when you go up to the floors and you pull those expired meds out of those ADMs, that could be a 2, 3, 4, maybe a week's worth of work. Some of the stuff we're doing around that, what you just said, it's really keen, is going to be having that chain of custody around that. Like, how do you prepare before you go up to those floors and collect, right? That's key. You want to make that process very easy. And then when you do collect, how do you bring it back down and show that it's been collected and have a chain of custody around it? Not that you're destroying it right there, but there's camera and giving you accountability around the chain of custody. And then if you choose to destroy, like, let's just say patient-owned meds, right? Because some of the stuff I just described to you might go back to the Inmars of the world, which we'll talk about that in a second. But like, think about patient-owned meds. There are hospitals out there that do accept them. They do bring them in. They actually get left behind, right? We store them, right? Well, I would have meds for 6 to 8 months at a time in big rooms. It was my biggest diversion scare, worry. It's who's really watching those, right? How do you get into those bags? How do you, get them out? So what happened is what we're doing is you're going to be able to do on camera, show what you're working with, even patient, information, even if they left the hospital, now it's all left behind, destroy it all on camera, counted and destroyed, have a record around it. It's another form of information that the DEA doesn't have. It's another form of information that you as an administrator can show that you're keeping a chain of custody that we don't have.
Okay. Lots of good stuff on your roadmap, for sure.
And it's coming.
Yeah. Compounding room, IV compounding room. Do you have something now that works that, or is that on the roadmap?
That's on the roadmap, but literally they're in the process now of coding just for all that software. So yes, there's ways to look at this. We'll talk about at another time, but really, like, how do you start to segregate these out? What's patient related? What's not patient related yet? So you have to segregate those out from a data point of view. And then how does that tie into the narcotic vault? If you're taking things that are controlled substances like morphine drips, if you're making those, how do you start to reconcile your narcotic ball versus what you
Yeah.
pull, what's left over, and who was the preparer in the compounding?
Yeah, and the overfill waste
That's right.
that you have. Yeah.
There's no way to look at
Okay.
it right now.
Yeah. All right. Wow, you got a lot of stuff. I wanted to ask you about, so from my understanding of your product, because it's on camera, if and I always feel bad picking on nurses, but if the nurse isn't going to use the entire syringe, right? And so they do an integrated waste at the time of removal. And all of that is just right there and it's all captured and it's great. But there are hospitals that don't enforce or have a policy that they need to do integrated waste. And they may leave the room with the entire syringe and then they come back and go through the motions.
Right.
What do you say to that? Because I think you lose some of the value of the MIDAS View, right? So how do you deal with that?
So, and that's part of the problem, right? I mean, they're going outside the boundaries. By letting them outside the boundaries and doing what they want to do is what's creating the issue. So if you want to do that and you want to continue letting people do that on your staff, that's putting you at risk. So it's time to say to yourselves, you know what? I have a way now to take control of this because I really didn't have it before, but now I do. So I want to put the controls in effect, and this is how it should work. And we want to hold them accountable for that. Now, I know there's going to be times, right? You have a stat order, you have patients going through pain. Hey, let's just even remember, Terry, even if you come into the ER, there might even be any orders, right? Yet. But you have all these leftover meds, right? No orders yet. The orders have to be put in. With our system, we're going to be able to reconcile those, have a record of it, wasting them even without. So let's just take what you just first said. They went out, they did it. Let's just use that as an example. It was a stat they had to run to the patient. They came back. They had no time. But at least now we have a record of what they have in their hands. And through AI, over time, I can tell if that was a pre-filled syringe for a specific drug manufacturer. I'm going to tell whether or not that's really that syringe. Now, if it looked a different color, looks a little diluted, where they put sterile water in there, over time, it's going to start to recognize that. And what does it do? It tags it. Right? So that's why I say to you, the AI is very important because over time, we're looking at that tablet, those syringe, those markings. What do they look like? And so that can be flagged. So even though they had to do what they had to do for patient care, and we respect that, let's bring them back into a lane and keep it what we can apply to it and apply it to it, right? But let's also let them know that, you know what? It's time now that you should be doing it this way. It's not, let's just go do what we want. Let's go do what's supposed to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And the trending too, right? If somebody it's a one-off or, very occasional versus everyone else has figured out how to do this, but you keep having these excuses, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terry, think of this for a second. I want you to think it's like a silent service, right? I want you to think of how we take for granted how the electricity to our house or the water gets to our house, right? We always take stuff like that for granted. We at MIDAS want to do that on the wasting side with our intelligence, right? We want the industry to have that same confidence. Let us hold that for you. We want to provide the intelligence. Let us look at the data, bring it together, reconcile it. Let us be that piece of the puzzle that you don't have now, right, and provide that as a platform.
Right. Yeah. No, that sounds good. I had another thought in my head and it disappeared. Does your team, I'm sure you've been talking with a lot of, potential clients, being a new product, you're, having a lot of conversations and engaging people in it. Is your team hearing anything in particular from all of the different organizations in terms of what they're struggling with? I mean, it might be waste, it might be something else. Like, are you gathering any kind of additional information that you're finding surprising or
not
what
really,
we're all hearing?
Not really surprising. What's really coming to the forefront is the OR, right? It's very challenged. And they don't have real proof around this. And they really want to have some proof around this. So what we're doing is, and that's why we fast forwarded on the Pro card, right? The MIDAS Pro and the MIDAS software behind that. That wasn't supposed to come out for another couple of months. It's ready. It's ready to go. So in fact, we are right now touring with hospitals and customers and showcasing. And getting ready for contracts. There are customers in contracts right now that are reviewing. Um, the pushback has not been that at all. It's like it's really inspirational from that piece of from my experience of what I've dealt with other companies and what I've done in the past. They're open. They want to know, how do they meet this challenge? And you know what's so great about what we're doing? We can do it in phases. We can say, let's do your ORs first. Let's get you
Okay.
comfortable. Or you want to do on your med search side, you want to do certain areas, right? The fact that we can take our data that's agnostic, right, and start to harmonize it in the sense of saying, if you're in one space and you want to waste in another, right, you can still do that. Because I know where your order was. I'm going to look at your line items around what the data points are, but I'm going to make sure it's reconciled. Not really can do it so much on the DM side of the business right now, right?
Yeah.
So we want to be flexible for you as a customer, and we want to provide the intelligence. The industry is not addressing this side of the market. It's just not.
Yeah. You said the word intelligence, and my thought popped right back into my head. The AI. Is it also to read the person?
Yes. So it's going to look at movements as you walk into, let's just say you signed on, fingerprint, you're on. First of all, I just want to get that clear. So once you put your finger in, you're right onto the system, you can start wasting. Choose your patient, just like you do it at ADM or anywhere you are. It's going to start to realize in time, it's also going to realize, were you working yesterday? What lab coat did you have on? Did it have 3 pockets, 4 pockets, 5 pockets? It starts to look, AI is very smart over time, right? And we'll start to program it. And it's on the platform of AWS, right? So with Amazon. And as it gets smarter and smarter, we're going to get smarter, right, with it. And as it sees, let's say, Terry, let's say it was you each day, and it starts to notice like your waste, you have 10 waste in one day. Maybe you don't have any waste the next day. Why not? That could be a flag. What, you're on the same floor, same patient population, right? Why aren't you don't have any waste today? So that can, you can flag that and say, why? Why is that happening? So, and what does that mean? So when we say that to you, our control zone, right, which is an overview. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the control zone is something that you would keep in central pharmacy, probably in the director of pharmacy or chief pharmacy officer on the wall, right? And they'll be able to access things like what's going on each floor at each cart, that's doing the wasting process on the MIDAS system. Top 10 waste per person, top 10 drugs that are wasted on that cart. Any of the data that's so important, right? And then I want you to think about this for a second. That control zone, not just for hospitals, then you want to think about how does it affect the system? So a chief pharmacy officer who's governing the whole system can look at it. What's going on at this hospital? What's going on at that hospital around the wasting process? Actually look at those carts and get down to the granular level, not just what I just said about top 10 drugs or users, but the actual replenishment of those RX destroyers that are in there. What's the capacities? And the first time you're ever going to be alerted, by the way, which has never been done before, we chase these, right, from the Stericycle days of the world, is that if it needs to be replaced, it's going to tell you when it's at 70%. It can alert pharmacy, nursing, and building services all at once. This needs to get changed. So you're not chasing those parts of the system. And even when that exchange does happen, those people are on actual video during that event. So we're monitoring them as well. But back to the control zone, just to let you know, you think about it, what it's doing for hospitals, what will it do for the industry, right? I want you to think of big governments for a moment, because the DEA and the FDA, if they want to start looking at what's happening out in the industry, the aggregate of the data, well, I'm not giving them patient data. I just want to know the aggregate. What's going on with specific drugs, dosages, and what's getting disposed of and what's getting wasted and how many times and where. We don't have that data anymore at all. We never did. It's time that we have the ability. We're going to generate it for you, not just for your system, but the government agencies as well are interested in what we're doing, because they're going to be able to take this, ingest it, and make some wise decisions, even from a manufacturing point of view, right? So the system itself, even though we talk about hospitals, you're going to be able to utilize this system, the MIDAS View system, in ASCs. You're going to be able to use it in nursing homes. You're going to be able to use it anywhere, even outside the healthcare industry. We're going to be utilizing it in ambulances. That's still healthcare, but ambulances as well. Anywhere in, let's just say, wherever they have drugs and they confiscate drugs. So we're doing things with Border Patrol. We're going to be doing things around what's happening in jails and so on, uh, and precincts. So wherever there's drugs, we have to provide that intelligence about getting rid of them, because that's part of our pipeline. Because we have something that we're coming out on the retail side that's going to be part of that intelligent take back systems, right? Because what do we go? We go back to these dump boxes.
Right. Yeah. Does it integrate with if somebody has a waste assay product?
So if you have any of those waste assay products, we think in the future those are going to go away with our AI. But more than happy to, right? So whenever we come in and we do that, how about we're RX intercepting, right? And you want to put it through a waste assay side of the business, go right ahead. We know those have a lot of false positives and false negatives. We know they're expensive. We know that you can't test certain things, right? But listen, we want to be locking arms with everybody. We should be part of the system with everybody. We want to be complementary. And that's the only way we can provide a platform that makes sense right now, right? And in time, we'll see what happens in the future, how that all plays out, but happy to. Just like we're happy to tie into the diversion software, why not on the other side of it too?
Right. Do you see the MIDAS replacing other things that an institution has, or being an addition to everything that they have? I mean, cameras are one thing that I think of immediately, right? In your med room, if that's where the machine is, then you don't need cameras in the med room.
Well, keep in mind that we're only monitoring the event of wasting with our cameras.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
So whatever they want to do on their side with the cameras, to me, you're still chasing it, right? You still don't really know. I've been to customers where they tell me that wasting or dispensing, the people that are doing it, they know how to block out the cameras. They know how to position their bodies. There's no AI built in those cameras to understand what's happening, and no alert. Because if with our AI over time, it's going to alert you. Somebody
You're
did
blocking. Yeah.
And then it could trigger an RX intercept.
Sure.
So they're not interactive, those cameras, right?
Yeah.
So this is an addition to, and you probably won't ever need cameras in time. I think in the years to come. But you know what? We're sophisticated. We're going to stay sophisticated. We're going to stay cutting edge, and we're going to be disruptive. And we got to provide that confidence because of that.
Right. All right. Well, it sounds fascinating. I'm looking forward to talking with some of your customers once they're like fully up and had a chance to. I know it takes a while to dial in with any new technology. So I look forward to that.
You're months away, so we'll be happy to have you come and look at it and experience it for yourself. But it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Glad we did this. And thanks for your work on this. You're right. Waste is a problem. And I was just talking to somebody recently that was kind of presenting to their system diversion team. And it was our biggest risk is the waste. And she presented those numbers out of their surveillance software, right? Unaccounted for waste. And so here we are, waste again.
That's right.
So a lot of pieces to it. Absolutely, for sure.
Exactly. Let's provide the intelligence and let's help everybody.
Yeah, great. All right. Thanks very much, Michael.
Thank you for having me.